The rich man lived a life of luxury. Every morning, he woke up in his grand mansion, with rooms filled with fine furniture, expensive paintings, and a view that stretched for miles. He drove the latest sports car, wore custom-tailored suits, and never worried about money. Success had always followed him. From a young age, he knew what he wanted and worked hard to get it. Now he had everything, but something was missing. He didn't have many close friends. Most people he knew were either colleagues or business partners. Sometimes he felt lonely in his fancy house, surrounded by riches but unable to find real happiness. He spent his days attending meetings, signing deals, and making investments. Life felt routine, predictable, and at times, dull. The more he achieved, the more he felt like something was missing. But what? He couldn't quite put his finger on it. In all his wealth and success, he hadn't thought much about those who lived differently. The world outside his bubble seemed distant, almost invisible. People struggled, fought for their basic needs, but he was too busy with his own life to notice. The poor girl lived in a modest apartment in a quiet part of town. Her family had very little. Her parents worked long hours, but their jobs barely paid the bills. She was grateful for what she had, but there was always something missing. Her clothes were old, and the things she needed for school weren't always within reach. School was important to her. It was her way out. She wanted to be someone better. But every day was a struggle. She woke up early to help her parents, then rushed to school, hoping she wouldn't be late. Her backpack was old, her shoes had holes, and her textbooks were hand-me-downs. She didn't mind the work, it was just the way life was. But every time she looked at the other students with their new things, it hurt a little. They had everything they needed. She had to borrow supplies or go without. Still, she was determined to make it. She studied hard, did all her homework, and pushed through the challenges. But there was one thing she couldn't change: tuition. Her family didn't have enough money to pay for school. She tried to get a part-time job, but it wasn't enough. She worried every day about what would happen if she couldn't afford her classes. She felt trapped, but she kept going. School was her future, and she wouldn't give up on it. One day, the rich man was out on his usual errands. He was walking through the local market, on his way to pick up some business supplies. As he passed by a small corner shop, he saw the girl. She was standing near the counter, counting the few coins in her hand. The cashier looked at her, then at the price of the item, and shook his head. The girl seemed embarrassed but didn't argue. She put the item down and left. The rich man noticed her. There was something about the way she carried herself. Despite the struggle, there was a quiet strength in her. Her eyes, determined yet sad, caught his attention. He followed her outside. "Excuse me," he called out. The girl turned around, startled. She recognized him, the rich businessman. She felt a little nervous, unsure of what he wanted. "Are you okay?" he asked. She hesitated. "Yeah, I'm fine," she replied, trying to hide her worry. "Just figuring things out." He noticed her discomfort and felt a pang of guilt. "I saw you at the store. Are you sure you're okay?" She smiled weakly. "I just couldn't afford some of the school supplies. It's no big deal." The rich man was quiet for a moment. He didn't know why, but something about her words felt different. "I didn't know people had to choose between things like school and basic needs," he said, his voice softening. "That shouldn't happen." She shrugged. "It's how things are for some of us." The rich man knew that something was wrong. He needed to know more. That evening, as the rich man sat in his luxurious office, his thoughts kept drifting back to the girl. He was still thinking about the way she had looked at the cashier, how she tried to hide her struggle, but he saw right through it. For the first time in a long while, he felt a tug on his heart. It was strange. He had seen many people struggling in his life, but none had affected him like this. He realized that despite all his wealth, he had never truly seen people outside his bubble. He thought about her situation, how hard she worked, yet still couldn't afford school. He thought about how easy it was for him to buy anything he wanted, while she was worrying about something so basic. He wondered what could be done to help. But then doubts crept in. Was he the right person to do something? Would she even accept help from someone like him? He didn't know, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had to do something. He had to find a way to help. The next day, the rich man decided to take action. He called a local school supply store and bought everything a student would need for the year. Not just notebooks and pencils, but textbooks, backpacks, and even a new uniform. He also contacted the school directly to pay her tuition for the semester. He was nervous. What if she thought he was overstepping? What if she didn't want his help? But he knew deep down that this was the right thing to do. Later that day, he went to her apartment. When the girl opened the door, she looked surprised to see him. "I wanted to give you something," the rich man said, holding out the large bag filled with supplies. The girl's eyes widened. "What is this?" He smiled softly. "It's all for you. I know you're struggling, and I wanted to help." She took a step back, stunned. I can't accept this. I don't know how to repay you." He shook his head. "It's not about repayment. It's about giving you a chance. You deserve to go to school without worrying." The girl stood there, unable to speak. She felt overwhelmed. She had never imagined someone like him would do something like this for her. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Thank you." The rich man nodded. "Just use this gift to keep going. That's all I ask." Over the next few weeks, the girl's life began to transform in ways she hadn't imagined. The burden of financial worry was finally lifted. No more sleepless nights, stressing about how to pay for tuition, or where to find the money for books and supplies. She had everything she needed to succeed, thanks to the rich man's unexpected gift. For the first time in a long while, she could focus completely on her studies. She started to give her all to her work, knowing that she could now do it without distractions or worries about the future. Her grades began to improve. She was more engaged in class, more focused during lectures, and more confident in asking questions when she didn't understand something. Her teachers noticed the change. They had always seen her as a quiet, hardworking student, but now she was speaking up more, sharing her thoughts and ideas. They could see that she was finally reaching her full potential. Her eyes sparkled with the excitement of learning. She no longer felt like she was just scraping by. She started to believe in her future. The girl even began to dream bigger. With the weight of financial stress gone, she allowed herself to think about the possibilities that lay ahead. She started to think about what she could achieve after school. Maybe she would become a teacher, or even start her own business. For the first time, she saw a path forward. A path that wasn't just about survival. She knew that the rich man's gesture had given her that opportunity. It wasn't just the supplies or the tuition. It was the belief he had shown in her. She had a chance now, and she was determined to make the most of it. Meanwhile, the rich man was feeling something inside that he hadn't experienced before. Helping the girl had given him a deep sense of peace, a feeling of fulfillment that had been missing from his life for years. He realized that in all his years of chasing wealth, he had never felt this kind of satisfaction. Giving, he discovered, was its own reward. It wasn't about receiving recognition or admiration. It was about making a real difference in someone's life, no matter how small that difference might seem. His sense of purpose began to shift. He started looking at the world around him with a new perspective. He noticed the people who were struggling, the ones who, like the girl, were working hard every day but couldn't catch a break. He found himself wanting to help more people, not out of obligation, but because it felt like the right thing to do. It wasn't always about big gestures or grand acts. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness could change a life. The rich man didn't want to tell anyone about what he had done. He didn't seek attention or praise for his actions. It wasn't about getting credit. He understood that real kindness didn't require an audience. The girl didn't know about his reasons for helping her, and that was fine. What mattered was that he had seen a need and acted on it. He didn't want the world to know, because to him, it wasn't about looking good or seeking validation. It was simply about making a difference, in whatever way he could. Though their lives continued in different directions, the girl and the rich man shared a silent understanding. They never became close friends. They never saw each other again after that one moment. But they had an unspoken respect for one another. She respected his kindness and his belief in her, while he respected her determination and hard work. They were two people from different worlds, but that one encounter had changed them both in ways they would never forget. The rich man went back to his business, but something inside him had shifted. He couldn't explain it, but he no longer felt the same burning desire for more money, more power, or more recognition. In the past, he had worked tirelessly, always looking for the next big deal or investment, thinking that with each success he would find fulfillment. But now he realized that these things didn't bring him the satisfaction he had hoped for. It wasn't about building an empire or outshining others. Helping the girl had opened his eyes to something much deeper. He had discovered that true happiness didn't lie in accumulating wealth or status, but in using whatever resources he had to make life better for others. It was a humbling experience, and in that moment, he understood that giving, not taking, was the key to a richer, more meaningful life. For the first time in a long while, he felt at peace. He didn't need the accolades or the flashy possessions anymore. What mattered was knowing he had made a real difference in someone's life. It wasn't about how much he had, but how much he could give. And that realization gave him a sense of purpose that he had been searching for all along, a purpose far more valuable than anything money could buy.